Hi everyone, my name is Eric Tilburg, and I would like to tell you a bit about the project that I've been working on. Go ahead. Yeah. So basically this tells you the inputs and outputs, which is probably the best way to understand it. And what I do is I take tweets, quite a few of them, and I select those that feature either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, but it could be any politicians. And I'm only taking them from certain news sources. And what I do with them is I take the images and I run them through mood detection, a mood detection API, and I run the text through sentiment analysis gem. And with that, I can create some cool charts that show how these news outlets portray the two politicians, which results in a pretty interesting story. So before I get into the nuts and bolts, I figured I'd go over the technologies that I use. It's all coded in Ruby. The sky biometry API is what I use to get the mood analysis from the images. The Twitter gem is what I use to get the tweets themselves. It actually gives me 3,200 tweets from any one source at a time. SQLite 3 is my database. The mechanized gem is what I use to parse the tweets and figure out where exactly the URL of the image is, for example. And then the gruff gem is what I use to create charts, and there's not really a good image for gruff, so we'll have to do with McGruff. Hopefully that's good enough. And then the sentimental gem is what I use. I'm glad that joke is not lost on people. The sentimental gem is what I use to get the sentiment from the text analysis. So I'm going to walk through the process from beginning to end. Basically, I take my 5 news sources, and I mentioned before 3,200 tweets from each, so I get 16,000 total from the Twitter gem. It actually narrows down quite a lot when I eliminate those that do not include references to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, and that narrows it down all the way to just about 1,600. Then I run the remaining tweets, the 1,600, through Mechanize, which parse the tweets, as I mentioned before, to get the URLs. I dump those URLs in my database, but I also send the URLs to Sky Biometry to get the image and to get the mood from the image. And then I also send the text of the tweet to Sentimental to get the sentiment of the text. And then finally from the database, McGruff takes care of the visual, part of it. So let's take a look at some results. This is from Huffington Post. And we can see on the left, well, this is showing both the moods, so this is based on the images of their faces. That Clinton is sort of equal parts disgusted and surprised. Whatever that means, you can interpret that how you will. And then the rest are smaller amounts, whereas Trump is represented as just disgusted, pretty much, like overwhelmingly disgusted. And of course, it's not my place to say whether that's because Huffington Post thinks that he is disgusted or if he just has a disgusted looking face. Anyway.
Can you read the other colors? I can't quite read the...
Oh, these?
Yeah.
So this is neutral, which is this one. Surprised, 7%. Sad is red. Angry, happy, scared, disgusted.
So happy is not on Trump at all.
Hey, good point.
Is this just the image analysis or just the textual analysis?
This is just
or
images.
both?
It's not both. We get to
This is just image.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is just the image. So I've actually separated the image from the text in terms of analysis because, at least to start with, they don't line up in terms of the possible results. And you might have noticed that these are skewed towards negative words. So there are 7 total possible moods. And the only positive is happy, and then perhaps neutral. But scared, angry, sad. Well, surprised could be.
And that's just the API that they offer.
Yeah. That's what I happen to use. So that's something that I'm going to look into in the future to see if I can maybe use a different API or somehow fix that because I think it's quite a bit skewed. Anyway, let's get on to the sentiment. So this is about the text of the tweets, and these are just the tweets that are surrounding these politicians. What they're associated with in these tweets. And we can see again, Clinton is sort of equal parts negative, positive with a smaller amount neutral. So, an even-handed look at Clinton, I'd say. But check out Trump, negative. That's what you probably can't read it, but the yellow is negative. So again, we have a pretty overwhelming negative vibe from Trump.
And in this case, it's the text that the news source is
Yes.
selecting.
Right, it's the
to
text.
tweet.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not necessarily what he said, although sometimes it is.
Right.
And it's not necessarily what someone says about him, it's just kind of surrounding him, you might say. So I want to go into some of the challenges that I faced in creating this project. And the first one is the initial planning, what to do. I actually started quite a few iterations that are really other projects that are not related to this very closely before I came upon this idea, because I wanted to find something that told a good story. And so once I came upon the idea of looking at mood through this visual, photo analysis, I thought I could look at historical photos. So I could look at, FDR versus Carter or something and see, how do historical politicians compare over time? Maybe graph it, plot moods on a line chart over time. Or, I could also plot it against economic performance. So if you take two presidents that have, say, 8-year or even 4-year terms or whatever, you can plot the economic performance and then how they look in photos of them. So these are sort of scoping issues that I found were, from the beginning, quite a bit too large and very ambitious. But they're still kind of in the back of my mind of things I'd like to do with it. And then another less ambitious scoping thing is to make it a web app, which is actually what I'm working on right now. But then there's the question of how much freedom to give the user. In this example, I've constrained it artificially quite a lot. I've selected the 5 news outlets and I've selected the 2 politicians. So there's a lot of my, bias or my opinion going into what I think will be interesting. So the other initial challenge was tooling. I don't know how to do any of this stuff, and so I didn't know how to analyze the photos. I didn't know, am I going to have to learn all this complex stuff that people have written papers about, or what actually ended up happening, will I be able to use a tool out of the box, so to speak? And then where do I get photos from? We'll return to this point in a little bit. Does it matter? Do I need to care about the source? In this case, I obviously do care about the source, because these 5 different sources tell different stories. Now I analyze these birds, and they all turn out neutral. Okay, great. So then I came with the challenge of getting the images, and I found that I could tell a better story if I discriminate between news sources, if I don't just get them all from, for example, Google image search. That was my first idea, was just to use Google image search, get all the images, and then send them through the machine and see what they come up with. And of course, with Google image search, you can see what the source is of that image, but it's not organized in a way where you're going to get X number from one source, X number from another source, and so on. So I couldn't really discriminate between news sources as easily as I wanted to, so I chucked that. I tried RSS, but the problem with that is getting mass data. They only, for any given news source, tend to only let you go back 10 or 20 articles. And that's not really enough to draw these cool charts that we saw. So then I came upon Twitter, which once I found this gem, I discovered, oh hey, I can get 3,200 tweets, and as we saw, it narrows down quite a lot when you just put the constraint on Trump or Clinton, but that's sort of good enough for my purposes. So then the challenge is parsing tweets. This is another sort of artificial point that I built into this project, which is that not every news source uses the same format. So some of them will be totally ad hoc, and their tweets will be all over the place, and they won't have any sort of standardization. Others, like CNN, have total standardization, where there's a little bit of text and a photo, a little bit of text and a photo, and that's it. And then others are kind of in between, where some will include a photo, some won't include a photo, some will include a video. That was the problem I had with Fox News, because I would have loved to include them, obviously. So I had to find Twitter accounts with consistent images, and using the mechanized gem, I then had to figure out where the image is in the tweet. So we're going to look into that in a little more detail.
Can you go into more about regex being the devil?
You want to hear more about that?
No, I just wanted to call that out.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta say, I just sort of dipped my toe in the pool, and I'm already, running for the hills. No, but it's, it's a very powerful thing to be able to do, but it's, really a lot of trial and error, I guess. So, in parsing tweets, this is the tweet that I get. So you see the text, can you guys read this at all, or, yeah, sort of? Sure. You see the text goes there, and then you've got 2 URLs here, and this is CNN Politics. And so you see here, this is how I actually extracted, And the thing that I want to point your attention to is that I take the last URL, because the other one is not the image we're looking for, and I look for large in the URLs in the URL, this quote colon large. So, and we can see, okay, this you definitely can't read, but this is where large shows up in each image, and I just happen to find that marker that then allowed me to, get any image no matter what it was of, and know that that's going to be the image, the right image. Yeah. So the next challenge is analyzing the faces, and here I had to, or analyzing the images. Here I had to choose between a couple options. OpenCV, Sky Biometry, Recognition were the three that I found. Recognition is easy to chuck because their API is no longer available or something, so that was no big deal. But I found that the real decision came down to ease of use versus complexity. And OpenCV was a bit more complex than Sky Biometry, and I was trying to go for something that I could churn out relatively quickly, so I went with Sky Biometry, even though there's a downside to Sky Biometry, which is the rate limit, which I'm actually not sure if OpenCV has. But Sky Biometry only lets you analyze 100 images per hour. So it's a situation where I had relatively few images to analyze, so I actually did the stupid manual thing of doing it every hour on the hour. But when I go forward with this project, I'll code up something that will automatically, churn through these images. So I want to just go into a little bit of what Sky Biometry results in. It gives me this long hash, and you might see in the middle there is face, mood, neutral mood, anger, disgust, fear, etc. So what I was interested is in the mood, and in this case it was angry. And then next to it is confidence level. This is the code that I used to get that word, angry. This whole long thing is navigating through the hash. So I've got a few future plans for this. One of them, as I sort of mentioned before, is to automatically continuously update the database with new images, new tweets, new images, and then new moods and new sentiments, preferably in real time. That would be pretty cool. I also want to go forward with the web app option and let users choose politicians and/or news outlets. And of course, the problem with that is that if they choose a news outlet that I haven't yet come up with my little script to pull out, the image, then that's a problem. So that's something I got to work around. And then another idea is to compare two sets of politicians, so Democrats versus Republicans, multiple images on each side, for example. But I also want to say that I'm totally open to your ideas. In fact, the ideas that I have on here are mostly other people's ideas that I've just kind of amalgamated, if that's a word, into my own, into this. So, I welcome, at the end of this or later on, anytime discussion about this. And then a little bit about me. I'm currently seeking a full-time position, but I am also looking for projects to work on. I'm especially interested in education, digital humanities, and civic engagement, those types of fields of things. So I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. I welcome any comments or questions, either now or, like I said, afterwards. So thank you very much for listening.
Sweet.
Thanks.